Welcome to episode 184 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the hard work pays off edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host. I'm with my co-host, the iRacing Indy 500 champion, computer genius, gentleman and a scholar, and someone that I was able to finally meet after we've known each other for 10 years. His name, by going to Waffle House, his name is Josh Fine. What's going on, brother?
Hey, I'm doing great, Phil. And of course, I was glad to finally get in touch in person. And what a way to do it by going to Waffle House. Of course, the staple of the South in terms of breakfast, and had a nice breakfast there. Nothing crazy happened, unlike what we see in those viral videos on the internet and everything. So glad to do that. And of course, went to the race on Saturday. Watched the Coke Zero 400. Went with two of my friends that I've known for a long time up in Jacksonville, and they really enjoyed it and everything. But we'll get into it. But of course, glad to be back on for another week of the show.
Yeah, and you end up meeting up with Joe Passero.
That's you,
a long-time contributor for us, and a friend of the show and friend of ours both. And you were able to go and meet up with him and hang out, so that was cool. That would have been cool to do that on my end, but we have to. We'll figure out something. But plenty to discuss from the Coke Zero 400. Christopher Buescher on a green-white checkered gets his third victory of 2023 and moves himself into the top 5 in points in the process. Led 2 laps on his way to his third win of the season. His teammate and car owner Brad Keselowski finished second. It was an interesting race, a lot of relatively quick race. Only 3 cautions for 18 laps. The big wreck, the stage 1, I think the big wreck ended up being the stage 2 caution, and then they had the last yellow was one that we're going to discuss in detail here in a little bit. We'll talk about everybody that made the playoffs. We'll also talk about the incidents that probably marred the race. We will get into the Xfinity Wawa 250, which saw Justin Allgaier finally get a super speedway victory in the Xfinity series. It was 100, so they ran another 10 laps, and so the scheduled distance was 100 laps. They ran 10 laps over because they had, I think, 3 green-white checkers there. So look into that. The Truck Series ran at the Milwaukee Mile for the first time since 2009. Ty Majeski, who had won the first race of the playoff at Indianapolis Raceway Park, and his crew chief Joe Shear Jr. were nailed for illegal modifications to the right rear tire. Whatever the specifics, we don't really know, but it's that holy trinity of messing with vehicles. He is locked into the next round, but he lost the fine. Joe Shears fined $25,000 and suspended the next 4 races. And it probably is something that could affect their situation moving forward in the rest of the playoffs. Didn't put that in there, and also Kurt Busch officially announcing his retirement from racing due to the concussion, ongoing issues he's had with recovering from the concussion he suffered, the latest concussion he suffered at Pocono Raceway last summer. And Gateway for IndyCar, Scott Dixon proving once again why he's a GOAT. making a strategy that basically no other human being could make work, winning 2 consecutive races, and keeping it interesting. It's probably still not going to happen, but it is Scott Dixon. He has done the unusual to go and win championships. That's how you win 6 championships. So we'll get into all that. Some of the silly season news that has come out here in the recent week, last week or so. So we'll some announcements and get into that. Formula One, same shit, different day, and talk about with one race in first round. Talk about that and other interesting happenings at the Dutch Grand Prix, which was a mixed weather race. Bad strategy calls by certain teams put certain drivers on the back foot, but it's kind of par for the course. We'll get into what happened there. Move into Homestead or Monza. Why am I saying Homestead? I must be like completely out of it. Moving on to Monza, one of the historic races in the Formula One calendar. We'll talk about fantasy football here as we are less than a week away in live time from when we're recording this from the start of the NFL season, and takeaways from the preseason itself, which I'll probably have a rant coming at that point.
Trey Lance getting traded.
Yeah, Trey Lance being traded, and the way that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch seemingly do business. The roundup will be short and sweet. Indy next. IMSA GT. We'll have F2 and F3. F2 last week at Zandvoort, but both series this week. MotoGP, Moto2 at Barcelona. And the granddaddy of them all, the U.S. Nationals at Indy this weekend. Anthony Wayne Stewart trying to win the Wally at Indy. Hopefully not trying to carry on the tradition he had in NASCAR and IndyCar where he couldn't win the big one. Hopefully he can get the big one here at Raceway Park or at IRP and win the big go. Preview the Italian Grand Prix behind Dick Lips and IndyCar Portland, 2 races ago in the season. Alex Palou on the cusp of a second IndyCar championship. Can Scott Dixon continue to dig into that gap? Cup and Xfinity will be at Darlington. Xfinity still has a couple races to go in their regular season. Cup starts their first round in the Southern 500. Josh will talk about all things in sim racing gaming in his sim segment. I even got to run a sim on the cruise that I was on for a few days, so that was nice. I wasn't the fastest guy, but I wasn't the slowest guy. So I can actually take solace in that. And then we'll call it a day. So let's go with the race you were at, Josh, the Coke Zero Sugar 400 at Daytona. As I mentioned, Christopher Buescher and Brad Keselowski give RFK a 1-2 finish again. That was the second time here in the 3 races that Buescher has won that that the teammates finished 1-2, I think, right? Or no, Richmond they were 1-2, but then Brad fell back or something like that. So that is the first time they've actually finished 1-2. Ford's got 4 of the top 5 spots. You had 22 drivers lead in this race out of the 39 cars that were in the race. Trying to see the laps, who led the most laps, and some of the other details. But Buescher, Keselowski, Almirola, Elliott trying to make it in on a Hail Mary, Joey Logano, Alex Bowman, Kyle Busch, William Byron, Kevin Harvick, who was leading in regulation and then got swallowed up in overtime. Corey LaJoie, Corey LaJoie 10th, Ty Dillon 11th. So that probably is the best combined finish for Spire ever. Bubba Wallace 12th, and he ends up making it into the Cup Series playoffs for the first time in his career. Michael McDowell from tailback to 13th. Austin Hill and Chandler Smith, two Xfinity drivers, 14th and 15th, and so on. 25 cars finished on the lead lap. Martin Truex Jr. won Stage 1 and locked up the regular season championship. Stage 2 was won by Brad Keselowski. But I think we'll go first, talk about Christopher Buescher and the move he was able to make on the green-white checkered to go and get the victory, and the fact that now he's won 3 races here in a short period of time on 3 different types of racetracks. And then we'll get into the 2 major incidents that took place on Saturday night involving Ryan Blaney and Ryan Preece. But, I mean, you were there, Josh. How was the race? How did it feel like, the momentum, the energies that were going on there? And what was it like when you saw, Chris Buescher be able to go and make that move to get that victory? And also, I don't know what people were thinking in the stands when Brad was driving in circles on the backstretch because his car was on fire.
Yeah, I mean, even though, this race definitely had its moments and everything, I mean, I liked that it was only 2 cautions for cause in this race, not counting the first stage caution. But, I mean, just in general, I mean, it seemed like a bigger event than maybe in years past. I mean, I haven't been to the Coke Zero 400 itself since probably 2013, but I mean, I've been to plenty of Daytona races, and I mean, I remember back then it seemed like the race definitely had a lot of people there for that one. And then this one, I mean, it seems like in the last couple of years, from social media sentiment, just gauging based off of, what you see on the TV and, from what people in the stands, pictures on social media, all that stuff. It seemed like maybe like there hadn't been as many people at this race, but, even though all of that seemed like this year that there definitely was a lot more people and everything. So, the crowd was definitely, into it throughout the race. It seemed like, they had their opinion and everything. Of course, I think, you speak to if they're Bubba Wallace fans or Chase Elliott fans or whatever, they were happy about, or not happy about certain things, especially Chase Elliott fans probably not happy that he didn't make the playoffs and all that stuff. So, you have all that. But the ending, I mean, I was fine with the ending, the restart there, Chris Buescher taking the lead, from Kevin Harvick there on the final lap, and then kind of going uncontested that final lap and everything, which, I'm fine with. Like, don't need to have, it doesn't always have to be dramatic, like where, you have 2 cars coming side by side to the line. I mean, of course, it's exciting, but, they made the move that they needed to make with Brad Keselowski and Chris Buescher making moves to win the race. And, I guess you could question Keselowski wanting to finish in second rather than go for the win. But, with this car, with how much drag it has, if he tries to go for the win, it easily brings Harvick back into that equation, or even somebody like Chase Elliott back in there, even Eric Almirola. So, which I guess for Ford, the Eric Almirola winning, corporately, that's good, I guess, getting him into the playoffs. But, I think Brad wants to try to help his team. That's kind of why he stayed in line. Gives a good shot for Buescher to get up to the, the playoffs and have a set of playoff points that he can use and give himself better seating as we start the playoffs here in Darlington next weekend. So definitely a good race overall. I think the crowd there with Brad Keselowski going in circles. It was an interesting moment. Still trying to figure out what happened during the wreck and everything. Trying to figure out, was Ryan and Blaney okay? That was a huge wreck there on the last lap of stage 2 on lap 95. And one thing I will mention is after I met up with Joe, during second stage, I went up to the 490 section. We were in this 370 section and actually made it there a quick amount of time left during the caution, was able to make it as they were coming to the green. And Joe was like really surprised because it was like, wow, you walk really fast. And I was like, yeah, I do a lot of exercise and all that stuff. So I was able to get up there pretty quickly. But, after we met up and everything, they got really aggressive, got 3 wide about lap 50, lap 60. That is, very much 3 wide racing throughout the field. And I was telling them, they're going to wreck here soon, maybe lap 60. It didn't happen. And then, get back down in the stands and everything. And then, with the way that they started racing towards the end, I was like, yeah, they're going to wreck here before the end of the stage. And then sure enough, Ryan Blaney gets right rear hooked by Ty Gibbs, gets a bad bump draft from Christopher Bell. And then Gibbs gets into Blaney, and then, off from there, Blaney gets head on shot into the wall, kind of like Dale Earnhardt's wreck. A lot of people talking about that in 2001, but go back to 2012. Remember the last lap crash there coming to the line with I think Kurt Busch also had or Ricky Stenhouse had a pretty bad hit head on back in 2012. That nationwide series opener back in 2012, if you all remember that. But that one, I just remember that one there. But yeah, definitely a hard impact. So I was kind of concerned for Ryan Blaney being able to get out, but he's able to get out and everything. So yeah, it was definitely an interesting scenario there with all of that. And then Keselowski car getting on fire, and then going in circles, and of course people on social media and everything debating whether that should have been legal. I mean, car setting on fire. I mean, got to find a way to put it out. So it's not like he's repairing I guess something had happened before the red flag, like Sterling Marlin 2002 Daytona 500 goes out and repairs the fender. It's not anything like that. It's literally like they're on the red flag and then sets on fire and everything. So goes on fire. So I think that's valid for something, driver safety and all that. So got to figure out a way to take care of that. But you have that, and then I think right around that time also we had the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launch. So that was actually pretty interesting as well. And honestly, I had no idea that it was happening. I had thought that there was already a rocket launch that happened. So, definitely that was surprising to see. But good sight, and definitely a good photo opportunity there. So Joe was able to get a good photo there and send that to me. So definitely like that, and save that one, send it to all my friends and everything. And I guess not all that often do you see a rocket launch at the race, like that. And honestly, it was a good view. So yeah, I was glad to see that happen and everything. And then of course, the red flag there, and then get back to racing and everything. So I mean, I like that there wasn't a whole lot of cautions. Like I said, I mean, not really a big fan of having them. And the fact that they were able to race for so long and race 3 wide, 2 wide without getting into each other, except for Ryan Preece and the Blaney crash there, the big one. Not having that happen, I think that's a huge plus, because I think makes it better, for the fans, and makes them look competent. Of course, you saw Xfinity have their issues and everything, so I guess it's better that the Xfinity series, the lower series, has all the mishaps and all the crashes, and the Cup series looks a little bit more professional in terms of how they're able to race super speedway being that close together. But yeah, overall, I think it was definitely a great event to go to. Definitely glad my friends were able to come with me, and I think they thoroughly enjoyed it and everything. And I had given them a document of all the drivers and tried to give them as much context and why this race is important, why do we care about this race at this particular time with the playoffs and everything, and what was all at stake for this one. So definitely glad that I was able to do that. And they from the document, it seemed like they liked Ross Chastain and Ryan Blaney. So Chastain, they were hoping for him to get to the win, but I think he got shuffled out of the draft after the last set of green flag pit stops. Bubba Wallace, I think, shuffled them out of the draft when they were trying to catch. They were in the second pack, trying to catch the first pack, and then got shuffled out there, and then wasn't really able to recover. Kind of stayed two side by side with for too long with one of his with his teammate Daniel Suarez and a couple of other cars, so he wasn't able to recover. But I mean, Chastain was cool watching him, and then just seeing all the racing and everything. So I was definitely glad to be there. And of course, I mean, I did mention Joe and everything. Quick story on that. So I was at the Chevy display waiting for the drivers, and then I see Joe on the other side, and I'm like, is that really him? And then I looked at my phone, went back to my phone and looked, and it's like, looked at the picture I had from October when we met up in Disney and everything, and looked at him over on the other side. I'm like, is that really him? And I wasn't sure, and everything was hard to tell. And there's another guy standing next to him. I thought it was maybe his dad, but his dad's wearing, or this person was wearing a Kyle Busch hat. And I was like, I think they're both Chase Elliott guys, and that doesn't add up there. So I wasn't sure. It kind of threw me off. And then later on, I texted him. I was like, "Were you at the race?" And he's like, "Yeah." And then we tagged up and everything on Twitter, and coordinated. And it was like, "Yeah, I'll meet up during stage 2." So yeah, that was cool and everything. And then of course, being able to link up. So I guess he's in Florida now or something. So I guess maybe we'll try to link up later again for one of the races or something, or potentially hit up Homestead when Dale Jr. races there for his one-off in Xfinity. So yeah, we'll figure out something there. But yeah, definitely glad to see him there, and definitely glad to be there at the race, with my friends and everything. So yeah, of course, that was definitely a great race that we saw there on Saturday.
Yeah, and I mean, when it comes to speedway racing, you're gonna have a lot of different players, a lot of people that are able to compete, but as long as it's not a complete demo derby, the cream will rise to the top. And in the case of Buescher and Keselowski, ever since the next gen car has come into play, the RFK team has been good at this style of racing. They just haven't been able to close the deal well they did now. You look at, I mean, I wanted to go, and I have to go back on this just out of curiosity, but the go to that. But I mean, you go through what the race, the big stories that came from the race, other than Chris Buescher, third victory of the year. Then you talk Bubba Wallace making the playoffs, and on the flip side, William Clyde Elliott II and Alex Bowman amongst a group of guys who didn't make the playoffs, guys who made the playoffs last year. Daniel Suarez is another one that made the playoffs that missed. You got Chase Briscoe, who ended up leading the most laps in the race, started on pole. He led early in the race, the first 22 laps. He led for 45 laps late in the race, but the pit stop sequences shuffled him out. And I mean, the fact is, you had people out there that were solid, drivers last year. The 18 car now is a 54, doesn't make it. I mean, there's a lot of drivers that were in the playoff that didn't make it this year. Only 13 winners in 2023 relative to, 15? So 2 less winners in the regular season, and I think there was 19 total winners by the end of 2022. I think was the right number, because all 3 races of round 1 were won by
non-playoff guys. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, there's so it's 18, and then I'm trying to remember who was the 19th off the top, but we can look at it in a
because it didn't set a record. I think 2011 had the record with 19. But
19.
Yeah, I think they had 18 last year.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And so you look at that, the way the parity was this year, there really wasn't as much. But I think seeing RFK come back into relevance is huge when Ford has been at a deficit all year. Kevin Harvick actually showing a little bit of life, knowing that this is the end of the road for him. There is a chance that he might be able to win a race in his final year. He's going to need more help than some other drivers, but it's Kevin Harvick and Rodney Childers. There's so much turmoil and stuff going on at SHR. It's not an ideal circumstance. Last year they had 2 cars in the playoff. Now they only have 1. Don't know what's going to happen with them. And Ryan, we'll look at it this way. Ryan Blaney gets right-reared by Keebler Gibbs because Chris Bell makes a stupid bump draft in the corner, because he seems to do that at every super speedway race. Gibbs is not, for as good as he thinks he is, he can't see over the dashboard, so he's not going to be able to save it. And that wreck was huge. Made me sick, just seeing that hit. But Blaney getting out of the car and being able to walk away, thankful for that. There's still a lot more work that really could be done with this car in terms of the crash structures and being able to soften the impacts. The other one was the Preece deal, which Eric Jones has been a weapon most of this year, and he hit Preece in the back of the draft there, and Preece went across the nose of Chase Briscoe, his teammate. Briscoe had led the most laps. Preece had had a decent run going, and Preece went on to go and make SportsCenter for all the wrong reasons, and destroyed his 41 car. He was in the hospital, and it's yet another example. No-Neck, the SRX champion No-Neck, basically came out and said, I'm not crazy enough to drive these cars on tracks above 1.5 miles. They've already made 2 bars named after me. I don't want a third because they have the 1 bar that goes in down the windshield, the Newman bar. Then there's another one that I wasn't aware of. He said there's 2 that are named after him in the car now because of wrecks that he has had at either super speedways or in general. And he hates super speedway racing. So I think that wreck with Ryan Preece was really, really bad. The fact that these cars take off in a way that it reminds me of Rusty Wallace in 1993, when you have the whole bottom of the car is basically sealed. And they're like, oh, we can't have grass, but there's paved road and you still take off. It's a speed issue, and it's an aero issue, and it's the way the car, the yaw, whatever. They don't have that piece like they had they have that little, I think they have that little piece on the left side still in between the windshield and the spoiler.
The shark fin?
Yeah, there's like a mini shark fin, but I think there has to be some sort of corrective measure in terms of either putting a bigger shark fin, or there has to be shark fins on both sides of the deck lid. And instead of having the stupid 450 horsepower package or whatever it is at super speedways. They need to up the horsepower to what they run at regular races, which I think is 550 or thereabouts.
670.
I don't. Okay, so I think they need to make a compromise. All right, so thank you for that. I need to make a compromise with the horsepower, and so that there could be a little bit of separation. I think the notion of being able to bring the slingshot back into play is something that should be looked at instead of being in a pack and waiting for somebody to destroy half the field. I've been outspoken in this and how much I dislike super speedway racing. Josh and Joe, of course, being Dale Jr. fans, love super speedway racing, but then he was one of the greatest at it. If you were a fan of an Earnhardt, I don't think you had a problem with it, or Jeffy. But if you're a Tony Stewart fan, you definitely did because he sucked at it. Except for like a period of. He sucked at it except for a period of time from July of there's like, I guess we can go to 04 when he should have won the Daytona 500, and all the way to the 7 Daytona 500 when he got destroyed and destroyed that great car. That was when he was actually really, really good. Otherwise, he was the drizzling shits when he had chance.
He has those 4 Xfinity wins every year. He was always a lock to win the Xfinity series every year.
Yeah, but that's essentially, that's the participation medal, winning the 300 at Daytona. It's what you want the Harley Earl Trophy. You never won it, and it, as somebody who hasn't seen his favorite driver win the Daytona 500 since he was a very little child, it still bothers me. So you got, instead of it being a demo derby, instead of it being a flip of a coin, you have to put the racing back in the driver's hands. It should be about having to drive a race car, but it really isn't. And to me, the wrecks like for Ryan Preece are just brutal and unnecessary. And, the Blaney thing was just stupidity on the part of the Gibbs guys. And there's guys out there that just drive like idiots. And, that's unfortunate, but there's no recourse for that kind of action, unfortunately. And that's where it goes down to these lower levels, or you see dipshits like Sawalich and Jesse Love and Hingarani and whoever that run over everybody and think it's okay. It isn't okay. And when you're doing it at 195 miles an hour, you're going to end up going and doing some sort of death-defying Evel Knievel shit. And it doesn't make any sense. I mean, the IndyCar guys basically said they can't go to Pocono anymore because they say it's too dangerous. I say that they're too stupid to police themselves, and that's a perfectly fine racetrack to race around, but they couldn't police themselves. These guys can't police themselves, and NASCAR's too stupid to realize that, and they also don't have a race car that functions in a manner that can make racing happen. They just want overrated demolition derby, and that one of those is determining the biggest race of the year, the race that everybody looks at, that every driver wants in their career too. So that's my 2 cents, but it doesn't take away that Chris Buescher won the race, and that Darrell Walsh Jr. was able to lock into the playoffs. He was really, really stressed out, had a lot of agita and anxiety through the whole week. Kyle Petty shit on him, and then he basically came back and responded with kind of took the high road on Kyle Petty, while other people may have had their went a little further with it. I mean, I don't know the aggro by which Kyle went at Darrell Walsh Jr. was necessary, but also once Bubba went out there and said, look, I did my media availability and my obligation on Wednesday, the week of the race, asked permission not to have to do press after that, and it's a perfectly fine request. Anybody can do it, and he wasn't the only one that didn't take a post-race interview. And but because it's Bubba, everything is magnified because it's him. But after all of this, he makes the playoff. He has a chance at a drivers' championship this year after driving the 45 car last year in terms of the owners' points and getting them, I think, to a top 10 finish or whatever, top 12 finish in the points last year. So we have we'll just go over the 16 in the points here. Just move over that. Going into the Southern 500 this weekend, Will Byron and Martin Truex start equal at 2,036 points because Truex got the 15 playoff point bonus. They're 11 points ahead of Denny Hamlin. Buescher moves up to fourth. I may have said fifth, but he's fourth. Kyle Busch, fifth. He is 17 points back. Larson, 19 points back. And sixth. And then Chris Bell, 22. 22 points back. Chastain, 25. Keselowski, 26. Reddick, 27. And defending series champion Joey Logano and his teammate Ryan Blaney, 28 back. The four drivers that are outside of the cutoff as we start the playoffs are Michael McDowell, who won at Indy just a few weeks ago, Richard, who won the Daytona 500, Kevin Harvick in his final year, and the aforementioned Darrell Walsh Jr. I look at this kind of, I think I look after and we'll talk about it more later, but I look at the guys from the top four as one piece. After that, from 5th to 16th, I think there's a lot of volatility that could take place. And that's probably what's going to make the playoff more interesting than it might have been in other years, in my opinion. But the Wawa 250 at Daytona saw Justin Allgaier get his 21st victory in the series, his second win of the year, his first super speedway victory, as I mentioned earlier in the Open. Sheldon Creed, yet again, gets a second place finish. He had a chance. He was leading late. Finishes just short of that maiden victory in the Xfinity series. Daniel Hemrick finishes third. Parker Kligerman fourth after announcing that he'll be back with Big Machine in 24. Cole Custer fifth. Ryan Sieg starting tailback with multiple penalties or whatever with his new sponsor finishes sixth. Parker Retzlaff seventh. Anthony Alfredo, Gray Galding, Justin Haley in the 10 car rounds out the top 10. Jeffrey Earnhardt was 11th and Jeb Burton 12th. Credit to Kyle Sieg, Joey Gase, and Jordan Anderson with his father-in-law as his crew chief, America's crew chief, old Larry Mack Reynolds. The stage winners, Austin Hill won the first stage, and Sheldon Creed won the second. They swapped positions in the first two stages, and the two RCR cars were first and third in laps led. Trevor Bayne driving the 19 for Gibbs led the second most laps, but shuffled back after an accident late in the race. I think the early wreck was a bunch of the back marker people and Bruckshot Jones, and then it also involved Natalie Decker going and ARCA braking her way into a crash. Joe Graff Jr. being Joe Graff Jr. and their weatherman. Then there was the accident, I think, that was Clements, Williams, John Hunter, Bain, Yaley, I think we're all involved in it. I think Baccarella and Ellis wrecked with each other, the teammates. So, I mean, for Creed, still, he's right on the cusp of getting that victory. I think he really wants to be able to get that victory prior to the start of the playoffs to give himself a chance. He has won in the Truck Series. He's won the XFinity, or he's won the ARCA title and Truck title. Austin Hill is arguably the favorite with John Hunter Nemechek, but yet again comes close, but no cigar, as Allgaier, who has never really been known for being the best super speedway racer, finally gets a super speedway victory and gives himself a little bit more support in terms of his opportunity to win the championship in 2023. Josh, what did you take away? And actually moved up with the issue for John Hunter Nemechek, moved up to second in points. He's a point ahead of John Hunter Nemechek with the regular season title with 2 races to go in the regular season. So what are your takeaways on Allgaier's victory and Creed and his prospects moving into the postseason, since he's locked in, or not locked in. I shouldn't say that. He isn't truly locked in. I mean, the points are a bit iffy, but they're not like crazy bad for him.
Yeah, of course. And, I think with Justin Allgaier, finally getting a super speedway win, he's come close several times. Had a chance in the spring, the 300 that he could have won, the nation in the Xfinity series earlier this year, could have won that. Really, Junior Motorsports could have won that one, but they didn't really have that opportunity. They kind of fumbled the bag late. But this one, comes back, was really committed to Brandon Jones, and I think after that, Brandon Jones got taken out. I think it was just him on his own trying to go and win the race and everything. So, for Allgaier, it's a good win because finally gets a super speedway win. But also, like you said, definitely gives him more foundation to fall back on when it comes to this whole playoff deal and everything. So a little bit more stability there. So finally getting a win there gives them confidence to do it again. Of course, they have Talladega coming up in the fall, the Nationwide Series. So now you got to think about him as somebody who could possibly win on track like Talladega, very similar to Daytona. So I think it's a good win for him. For Sheldon Creed, came really close. Honestly, watching that on the final lap, I really thought that maybe he might have the win there in the bag, because he did nose ahead there for a second on that last lap with Justin Allgaier, but Allgaier was able to side draft him back into the lead and everything. So definitely could have should there for Sheldon Creed. I think Creed had that. I think if he would have just tried to side draft him a little bit more, probably could have slowed him down. But maybe he just doesn't have that experience on the Xfinity side when it comes to being able to steal a win there on the last lap like that. So maybe just doesn't have that ability yet. But I guess he'll learn for next time there. But for him, even though he doesn't win, still good finish. It's better than getting wrecked on a super speedway and losing points. That's something you never want to see. But for him being able to do that, that's definitely more favorable there. So it's coming close. At some point he's going to win. He's I think by the end of the year we'll be talking about him having at least one win. So we'll see how that happens. I think also you got to talk about the points battle. With the top two. Of course, Austin Hill finishes the race. Led the most laps. Finished one lap down in 23rd, but John Hunter Nemechek gets taken out and finishes in 28th. So a difference of 5 spots in there, plus the stage points, kind of tilts the favor back into Austin Hill's hands here, and also opens the door for possibly Justin Allgaier if he goes on a hot streak. These last couple of races before the playoffs, gives him a shot to possibly get in there. But Austin Hill kind of damage control, being able to lead laps. First stage getting lap led, second stage finishing second. So definitely a better result for him there. Even though he ended up one lap down in 23rd. So yeah, this race, like we talked about earlier, contrasting it with the Cup race and the Xfinity race. This is where all the action in terms of wrecks happen. Like you said earlier, people losing it on, the super speedways and stuff. So, have a little bit of contrast there, which is, I guess, is okay. But, definitely, at least, for me, watching this race, how it unfolded on, with multiple extended finishes, green, white checkers, overtime as they call it now. But, contrasting that to Saturday, I was hoping we didn't have to go into overtimes multiple times. So, this race going into overtimes multiple times. I think if I'd attended, I'd be like, oh, this is taking forever to finish and everything. Gotta stop wrecking, all that stuff. So, definitely think, other than that, I think it was definitely a good race to be seen. And as a junior motorsports guy, finally glad that Justin Allgaier got a win at Daytona.
Yeah, and it's good for the team, and I think the morale. I know Junior's been on them to try to work together, and it hasn't worked out a lot so far this year. But getting that momentum moving forward, moving into this playoff, I think is big. Sam Mayer has gotten himself into the mix with a couple of wins. Barry has been close at times. It isn't the same deal as it was last year. Obviously, his mind and focus is also looking towards his future, driving the 4-car in Cup. And then you have Allgaier, the veteran. And then they're also trying to get Buckshot Jones into the playoff here. He needs a win, essentially. So we're trying to see if they can get everybody in there. You look at the point situation. 8 drivers have wins. I think Jeb Burton is outside of the top 12 overall. Sammy Smith was 12th. It's right on the cut of the points, but Jeb Burton is in. Josh Berry is plus 110 to the cut, so a few points. And whether if he does good in the stages at Darlington this weekend, that's basically a lock. Sheldon Creed, if he can get a good day at Darlington, same for Hemrick. I think both of them are pretty decent there. Creed was close to winning this race last September, so those 3 guys can be locked into the playoff with good runs at Darlington. The playoff battle would basically be decided between Parker Kligerman and Riley Herbst, outside of somebody outside of that group of the regulars winning one of those 2 races, which is probably slim and none. The Truck Series had their return to the Milwaukee Mile this past weekend, and it was definitely a race where you had to. I think when you have a few guys that actually have experience there, you had a good crowd. It looks like. You talk about I mean, you have the hometown guy in Ty Majeski who comes in. He's had experience there, winning in the ASA Stars National Tour. He's, you look at other guys. Crafton, of course, he's been around for 150 years, so I mean, he's liable to have raced everywhere. He probably raced against Zeus. You look at but when it came down to it, it was the playoff guys stood out. They were the ones that were able to make things happen. The vast majority of them, that is. Grant Enfinger gets the victory after GMS announces, or Maury Gallagher announces, that they're going to close shop officially at the end of the year. Enfinger takes both stages. He started on pole, takes both stages, leads them most laps. So he got the Grand Slam there at the Milwaukee Mile. Milwaukee Mile Speedway. I don't know who called it that, but that's stupid. It's probably NASCAR. Carson Hocevar started third, finished second. Christian Eckes finished third after starting sixth. Corey Heim, 8th to 4th. Crafton, 22nd to 5th. Top 5 all playoff guys. Ty Majeski, who had to start tailback with the aforementioned penalty that saw Joe Shear Jr. get sent out of the racetrack, from tailback to 7th. Derek Kraus, credit to him in the Spire team, 25th to 8th. Jake Garcia, 9th. Bailey Curry in the 41, 10th. Chase Birdie, first non-playoff guy, in 6th. Zane Smith was 12th. Ben Rhodes, 16th. Nick Sanchez started second, had decent stage points, but ended up falling back to 24th. And Matt DiBurrito had some stage points as well. Or no, he didn't have any stage points. That was Solage. Started 23rd, finished 27th. He announced that he's not going to be back with the 25 team, and barely anybody cares. I guess the takeaway is you can never count out Grant Enfinger, Josh. He won at IRP last year to start the playoff after not really being someone that everyone was looking at as a guy who could win races and be a championship contender. He wins there, takes it all the way to Phoenix. Now he goes and wins at the Milwaukee Mile and gives himself momentum as they go to Kansas, a track that he's run well at over the years. And with the issues that Ty Majeski and the ThorSport team are looking at right now, has the momentum shifted now? Is it more of a wide open situation again because of the penalty? Or is it just, will Ty Majeski and company will be able to hold, and they just have to get through the next round?
Yeah, that's an interesting scenario there. And I think first with Grant Enfinger, he's something that we don't really think about a whole lot. Unless you really follow the truck series, and a lot of these new guys that are trying to make it up into the Xfinity and Cup series, they steal a lot of the attention. Like Corey Heim or Carson Hocevar. A lot of the talk is on them. Obviously we know about Matt Crafton, widely veteran, been there a long time, but we don't really think about Grant Enfinger a whole lot in this series. And he's somebody that's kind of been around for a while. He's got 10 wins now, and now winning at the Milwaukee Mile. Now he's in the round of 8. So yeah, it definitely makes that battle for the Truck Series playoffs definitely a lot more interesting. And with that penalty, I think Majeski, of course, it's going to be interesting. I think he has. It's a big issue there for, first of all, that's like one of the things that you don't do is modify the wheels or whatever. So that's definitely something that's going to change the playoffs. I think like you say, he's probably just going to have to make it to the next round in this playoff. I think it's going to be tough for him. After that, I think there's going to be maybe increased scrutiny, and if they make it to the final round of the playoffs, they're going to have a lot to think about, because I think the final round of the playoffs, of course, they have they push the limit really on that car, and if they've already been penalized once, they're probably going to be looked at a little bit harder by NASCAR. So I mean, it's definitely not something that you want to see. And they have 75 points and 5 playoff points that they lost here, and it's definitely going to affect his ability to win the championship, because once they reset this, even though he's already into the next round and everything, even though all that's good, it's the ability to make it to the next one is going to be tough because of that penalty. He's going to have to win another race to get there. So we'll see how that happens, and if this penalty takes their ability to win races, that's definitely going to hurt him. So I think make it to the next round if they can, but they've definitely got a tough road ahead of them if they can't win their way in. So it's gonna be interesting to see. But Enfinger definitely makes his case for the championship here. So we'll see how he's able to follow it out into the next round and get to the round of 4. I mean, we've already talked about the round of 8 here in the Truck Series. Doesn't even feel like it for some reason, and we're still got we're September 1st today, and the championship is the first weekend of November, and so we still got 2 full calendar months, and we're already talking about the round of 4 here. So that's kind of crazy. But Grant Enfinger definitely he definitely has a shot. I think it'll be a good closing goodbye to the GMS truck team as they probably consolidate into focusing on Legacy Motor Club, as it's known in the Cup Series, for their Cup efforts. So definitely something that we're going to think about with that team.
Yeah, and you look at what that holy trinity in NASCAR, you can't mess with those things. It could be the thing that bands that team together. Ty Majeski has had a great year, both in the truck but also in his super late model, winning races, and he is known as a great super late model racer, period. He is an employee at ThorSport Racing as well, so it could be the uniting force that they're able to use it as a motivation, even though it was a big time rules infraction, and that could bring them together and be the momentum they need against the likes of a Corey Heim or Carson Hocevar, because Carson Hocevar has been pretty outspoken about it. Or, I would have said Zane Smith, but I think the stuff that's been going on with him in front row and the Fords is not very good. So it doesn't look like that momentum is there for the defending series champion, Craftsman Truck Series champion. So right now, Zane Smith has the Zane Smith won, or Ty Majeski won the race at IRP, as I mentioned. Grant Enfinger wins at the Milwaukee Mile, and they're both locked in to the round of 8. Corey Heim leads the points by 9 over Christian Eckes. Enfinger, Carson Hocevar in 4th, Majeski 5th. Then there's a huge gap between Majeski and Zane Smith from 5th and 6th. Matt Crafton, Nick Sanchez round out the top 8. Sanchez is up +3 on Ben Rhodes and +20 on D Burrito. So Rhodes that's the battle. Sanchez, who's shown really well on the intermediate tracks this year, battling with Ben Rhodes, a former series champion. I think that also puts Matt Crafton in the crosshairs as well, because he's only 9 points ahead of his teammate. So that'll be the battle for the last spots in the next round in a couple weeks' time. We have to look at what the 38 team continues to do, because that momentum is gone, and Zane Smith doesn't know what he's doing. We don't know what they're doing with that team. There's a lot of moving parts there. You're losing a big contender if they're basically going to separate after this season. Okay, let's move forward. Let's move into the Kurt Busch deal. He announced it on Friday, last Friday, so a week ago now, and he did it on social media. Then he did a presser at Daytona, emotional presser. Kurt Busch came onto the scene in the late 90s, taking over for Chris Trickle in the Star Nursery late model in the Southwest Tour, and won Rookie of the Year and stuff. And that was a big time ride. And during that time, he also was called to do one of the Roush Gong shows, as they were called back in the day. And he was chosen out of that group, and he was picked to drive the number 99 X-Side batteries Ford in the Craftsman Truck Series. His first race was marred with contact with his teammate Craig Biffle, and also being a part of the crash that almost killed Jeff Bodine. One of the most famous horrific crashes in NASCAR history. Kurt ended up going and running Truck Series, finishing like third in points or second in points or whatever. It was a dominant year for Roush that year in the Truck Series. Moved to the Cup Series soon after into 2001. Got flipped off by Dale Earnhardt in the Daytona 500. One of the last things he did. Kurt was rough around the edges for a long time. Got his ass kicked by Jimmy Spencer. There's a lot of stuff that went on with Kurt, but as the years went on, he recognized the faults he had and started to turn around, be much better with the fans, and people started to like him and root for him. I think also the notion that his brother is a bigger douche probably helped. That he was a more prolific winner and all that, but Kurt was able to win in all three major series. He's a Cup Series champion. He went to 2311 and was able to win them their first race. He continues to work for 2311. I think if you look at the CW with their Xfinity package that'll be coming in 2025, it'd be hard pressed to not go and call Kurt Busch and see if he wanted to be a part of their broadcast team, because he brings a great insight, and he did a good job for the Truck Series. It's much better than listening to Michael Waltrip, and Phil Parsons is long in the tooth at this point. You want to have somebody who's got relevant knowledge or has an understanding of the vehicles, and Kurt Busch does. He was misunderstood as a driver, and I think as a person, and there's definitely been a lot of things that have went on in his career and on and off the track that make him an interesting character. But long story short, he was a damn good race car driver. He wouldn't have been hired by three major organizations in his career if he hadn't moved through the biggest organizations, or four of them actually, for you to be honest, if he wasn't that good, or five actually. I keep on adding him, because he drove for Roush, drove for Penske, drove for Stewart-Haas. Then that was 3, and then he drove for Ganassi, and then 2311. Josh, what did you think about? I mean, we talked about it offline and stuff, but it's sad news. It kind of brings into light again the safety issues that come with the next gen car. It also speaks to how concussions were treated back in the day, 23 years ago, when Kurt became a Big 3 NASCAR driver relative to today. In that, he probably had accidents in a cup car or truck hitting a regular concrete wall, and may have been knocked out a little bit, or may have had some issues but didn't say anything, and that was the way it was. But those things multiply, and we see that in football. And now in Kurt's case, he's unable to get back into a race car, and it's been over a year since the incident.
I mean, it's definitely a sad situation with Kurt Busch and how his career in NASCAR has ended now. And I mean, for me, I honestly didn't find out about it, him actually retiring, until literally when he walked out onto the stage for driver intros, because he was the first driver that walked out because they were honoring him and everything. And I hadn't seen it on Friday. I was busy, throughout the day at work, and then doing stuff after work. I hadn't really had time to check Twitter or anything. And then, throughout the day of Saturday, not really online or anything like that to be able to see that news. And so I really didn't find out about his retirement announcement from NASCAR until walked across the stage there and everything. But, for the announcement, I mean, honestly, it's not too surprising to hear it. He's already been out of the car for a while, but I think it's still sad to see that he was able to walk out of the car on his terms. That the last time he's maybe ever going to drive a race car is spinning out into the turn 4 or turn 3 wall at Pocono in qualifying. Dale Jr. is my driver, and of course he had his issues with concussions, but at least can be thankful that he's still able to race somewhat. He's able to have his final season and have the retirement tour and everything like that, and he can race occasionally. And of course, even went and raced earlier at Florence Motor Speedway in South Carolina in the late models. So for Kurt, we don't even know if he's going to be able to do that. It's already been a year. He hasn't done anything racing wise, and I think the NASCAR thing's clearly over now. Could it be possible for him to try other deals? If he can get more time, to recover and everything. But it's really hard to say because just whatever issues preventing him from getting into the car or getting back into it. Seems like there's an issue with his heart rate or something, with I guess maybe how his brain is processing that or something like that, with getting too high or something for something affecting it by the concussion. But is what I think what the doctors were focusing on. And then also he mentioned that he's starting to develop arthritis, and he says that he sometimes has issues with gout and makes it painful to walk and all that stuff. So it's something I also have to consider if he tries, like let's say he does get cleared, those physical issues can be a little bit make it a little bit harder to get back into a race car, obviously. So that's something to consider as well. So definitely sad to see him go like that. Honestly kind of thought maybe there was hope that he could still get back in there, but now I guess he's going to transition fully into being that coach driver. I think they called it certified or CFO, chief fun officer or something like that at 2311 Racing, and help Bubba Wallace, help Tyler Reddick as they go on 2023 playoffs and try to make a run for the title. We'll see if it happens, but I guess I think for me, I grew more appreciative of him as he went through that deal where he went to the 51, became known as the Outlaw, brought the 78 some credibility there, and brought a car that never made the chase, into the chase, even though they didn't win a race. And then of course, going and doing the double in the Indianapolis 500 and finishing in 6th place with Andretti Autosport, and didn't finish the 600, but still, it's a pretty admirable effort, considering how tough it is in both of those races and everything. And, so I think from then, I've always had kind of a, admiration for him. And, I think over the years, he's kind of become a student of the sport and everything. So, definitely gonna miss his presence on the racetrack now that that door's been completely closed. So, I've always enjoyed his approach to racing. I've said before, he's a very cerebral driver. He understands, the race car and understands the track. He's a very smart guy, obviously. And, went to University of Arizona for, I think, a semester or two to study pharmacology or something like that. So clearly, he has the capability to, put himself in situations where he has to use, his intellect to get the most out of his race car, and use that intelligence to get in certain situations and be able to handle himself. So definitely gonna miss him, and sad that it ends like this. But maybe because of if this doesn't happen, maybe we don't have the focus and scrutiny on next gen car. Obviously, we saw Ryan Blaney, Ryan Preece both have pretty hard incidents on Saturday night. So, and obviously the increased focus on concussions since then, I think because of his incident, now they've kind of begun to focus in on the flaws of this car finally. And now, maybe if it weren't for that incident, we'd be talking about Ryan Blaney being out for a race with that concussion, or Ryan Preece potentially being out with a concussion. So, progress being made since then slowly, but, seems like maybe we're tracking the right direction, but, there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the safety of these cars, and Kurt came in at a time when safety was probably at its worst. He was in the Truck Series in the year 2000, and in NASCAR's Big Three Series, 3 drivers passed away. He ended up being in the Daytona 500 that we all know what happened at the end in 2001. The changes they made over the years after that, pushed a lot by Indianapolis with the safer barrier, Hans device, which was Jim Downing, and I forget who his partner was on that. The kind of things that they had to do to make the cars safer and more reliable in terms of being able to keep the drivers in a good place and be able to keep on going. I think even like Dale Jr.'s situation could have definitely been a lot more different. I always remember his California wreck back in 2002, and I think that was the one that started the downward trend for his, the concussions and stuff. But the hits that those guys took back in the day, we never looked at into them, and there wasn't, even with the great journos of the time, they weren't digging and looking at it in that sense. They were just asking him, "Oh, are you okay?" They're going to say, "Yeah." They're not going to go and say, "Oh no, I'm dizzy," or "I can't see you right now. My vision is blurry." I look at Kurt's situation, and there's in a parallel to a point of Ernie Irvan. But Ernie Irvan, of course, almost died at Michigan International Speedway in 1994 after a failed right front tire failed, and had a 10% chance to live. Basically lost the sight in his left eye. Took over a year to recover. Got back in a race car and was competitive, definitely, but wasn't the same guy. And but made himself way more susceptible after that incident to any type of massive hit. Ended up getting through the 96 season, finishing 10th in points, basically with one eye. I always like to say that. I'm like, look at all those guys out there that had two functional eyes, and he basically had one, and he beat all of them. And if they actually had an equal balance at Robert Yates Racing, he could have probably done even more and won 2 races. But in 97, competitiveness started to go away. 98, he was still around. He still had some pace, but he wasn't in the same type of equipment. Kurt, fortunately, outside of that 1 year with the Phoenix Racing, when he basically napalmed himself out of Penske, was in competitive equipment, and he was able to win races, and he was able to make a difference and be a kind of a mentor at the end of his career, which would have never been something people would have thought about him back in 2000. It's a shame. It sucks. You want to, like Josh said, you want to be able to leave on your own terms. But like I'm talking about with Ernie, he hit the wall. He had accidents in 98 and 99 that knocked him out. And then eventually in a Busch Series accident at Michigan International Speedway, the career-ending crash that he had to call. He had to announce his retirement at this weekend at the Darlington Southern 500 with his kids, who were very little at the time, and his wife. And so it's not ideal. It's the same kind of thing with Dale Jr. He knew that if he kept on going, that he was more likely to end up being in a bad situation, and with his team, but also his wife, and knowing that he has 2 young daughters, he had to make that decision. But he was able to race 1 more year. You know, Ernie wasn't able to do that, and Kurt's not able to do that. But at least Kurt is here. And I think that is the positive that we can take, hopefully, with the recovery measures that he's doing, some of the other ailments that are coming with it. He'll be able to have a good life and also stay in motorsport. I think that's all that we can really hope for Kurt and for his family. I'm gonna change it to a different note. We'll take it to a more positive note and talk about the Bommarito Automotive Group 500K at Worldwide Technology Raceway, Gateway, and Scott Dixon. So, I mean, how he did what he did, only made the race on 3 pit stops, while most everybody else had to make the next, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys had to make 5 pit stops. 2 less pit stops, led 123 laps. The race was basically between him and Joseph Newgarden. Newgarden hitting the fence late in the race, knocking himself out of contention, and in the process probably putting himself out of reach for the championship, because he's now 125 points behind with he's fucked. It's 125 now with 2 races to go. Even if he scored the maximum amount of points, it would be 106. So yeah, he's done. And he's in the crosshairs now with Pato O'Ward and Scott McLaughlin. But Scott Dixon has now won 2 races in a row. His teammate Alex Palou ended up finishing 7th. Dixon came from 16th to win at Gateway over Pato O'Ward, David Malukas, and Alexander Rossi. Scott McLaughlin rounding out the top 5. Herta, Palou, Rosenquist, Will Power, Marcus Ericsson rounding out the top 10. I mentioned Newgarden leading 98 laps. And then the rest outside of that, there's 18 for O'Ward, 13 for Herta, 4 for Rossi, and 4 for Power. Power and McLaughlin had issues, of course, together in practice. Power was pissed off. Then McLaughlin was pissed off with David Malukas and his driving. Malukas gets a second podium in a second year in a row at Gateway, knowing and sandwiched between two guys that he may be working with next year in O'Ward and Rossi. But the story is Scott Dixon. I mean, we can't ever question what Scott Dixon can do, Josh. Come from 16th to win, make 2 less pit stops than every other car in the field. He's a GOAT for a reason. That's all I can say. I mean, he still has a chance. I mean, albeit very small, but he has a chance if he can put together 2 great weekends at Portland this weekend and Laguna Seca next weekend, and he could possibly get that 7th championship. But it's going to be hard work, and he might have to win out to do it, but he's already won 2 races in a row, so what's stopping him from getting 4, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would be Scott Dixon-like to be able to go out and steal a championship at the last minute from Alex Palou. You know, we've seen him do it before and everything. You know, go back to 2015 when he came down to the final race to steal it from Juan Pablo Montoya there, when Montoya's second year back from IndyCar, and he goes out and wins or loses in the final race to Scott Dixon. But Scott Dixon, I mean, this race was Joseph Newgarden's race, and then out of nowhere, I was reading his name there on results, but Scott Dixon comes out there and goes out and wins this race. And yeah, I mean, taking 2 less pit stops is phenomenal, especially at a place like Gateway, an oval track nonetheless. That's quite a feat to be able to do that and everything. So Scott Dixon goes out there and wins this race. Yeah, I mean, it was really surprising. Honestly, didn't think it would happen. I really thought that Newgarden would go out here and just take care of business and sweep all the ovals this year. But then that doesn't happen. He goes out and brushes the wall and takes himself out there, and now he has not going to win the championship, of course. And I put a bet on him at the beginning of the year for Newgarden to win the championship, and that's not going to happen or anything. But whatever, that's fine. And all that, but Scott Dixon, it's just a very Scott Dixon-like moment there to go out and be able to do that. I mean, obviously, credit to the crew, but also for him, he's like the one driver that's really able to get the most out of this car, and suddenly for Alex Palou, I mean, looks like Alex Palou still has a likely chance to win the championship, but his teammate knocking on the door just ever so slightly, saying not so fast. So I think for Palou, I think he's just got to come out of Portland here and then go into Laguna Seca when making no mistakes. And he obviously doesn't need to win, but he can't go out there and have like a below top 10 day, I would say, or crash out or something like that. I mean, obviously failures can happen and all that stuff, but that's out of your hands at that point. So Alex Palou's wouldn't say he's nervous or anything like that, but definitely gotta keep that on watch, because Scott Dixon definitely not going away here before the end of the season, with only even 2 races left. So yeah, I mean, the racing is definitely good and everything. Of course, relatively incident free. Of course, the lap 1 incident, Ben Peterson, and then later on in this race, had another yellow with Takuma Sato there making contact, so in turn 2. So yeah, that was pretty interesting there. And then of course Newgarden getting into it as well. So yeah, disappointing there for him, for Newgarden starting on pole and then leading 98 laps and everything and looking like he would probably continue to win, but no, that doesn't happen. Scott Dixon just outdoes the field and everything. So yeah, that was pretty interesting there. Obviously O'Ward finishing second as well, so led a little bit of laps as well, and then Colton Herta led some laps as well. So Yeah, definitely a very interesting race strategy wise. So, yeah, now looking forward to seeing how these last two races play out. Is Scott Dixon just going to pull it out of the hat here, or is Alex Palou going to go ahead and lock up this title? We'll see.
And Alex Palou now has to work really hard. I don't know. He definitely hasn't been coasting. The notion that they're away from the ovals is in his favor. He's never really been fond of the ovals. He's gotten better, of course, but that seems to be that's kind of that weakness, if there is a weakness in Palou's game. But Dixon can race anywhere, win anywhere. He can do anything really. I mean, it's just insane what Scott Dixon can do. So he just has to go out there and I guess keep on going with it, because it would make an intriguing Laguna Seca finale if he can he needs to cut another. He's right now 74 points behind. He would have to cut 21 points more into the gap this weekend to make it, mathematically possible, or maybe a little less than that, but because of qualifying points and all. But essentially, he needs to cut it down between 20 to 25 points to make it a battle going into Laguna Seca next week. Here at Portland, we'll talk about Portland in a little while. Formula One was at Zandvoort for the Dutch Grand Prix. Who won? There was weather early in the race. They had rain basically right at the start. Certain teams responded to said rain much better than others. Some guys ended up basically having egg on their face with how things were handled. It was kind of a cluster, really, of a race, but Fish Lips ended up getting a third consecutive win at one of his home tracks. Fernando Alonso and Pierre Gasly rounded out the podium. Was a closer finish, mainly because of the weather. Alonso 3.74 seconds behind, Pierre Gasly just over 7 seconds, Sergio Perez 10 seconds back in fourth, and Carlos Sainz in fifth. Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, Alexander Albon, Oscar Piastri, and Esteban Ocon getting points for for Alpine. So Alpine gets double points, McLaren gets double points. This and also Red Bull. Liam Lawson in his Formula One debut, as a substitute for Daniel Ricciardo, broke his right hand in practice earlier in the weekend. Finished 13th. Logan Sargent fell out of the race early while he was in position. He had a chance possibly to get those elusive points. Fell out. He had crashed in qualifying after making it into the Q3 for the first time. Leclerc incident for him, and so for Guan Yu Zhou as well. George Russell finished dead last of the classified runners in 17th. I'll say, we knew that what was going to happen. We both picked him to win, but Fernando Alonso, for the first time in a while, coming up there, finishing on the podium, and I thought that he was somebody to look at. I picked him to finish third in the race. We both picked Newgarden to win at Gateway, and it definitely didn't work. The only pick that was somewhat good was your pick of Malukas. We both picked Fish Lips. Our second place finishes wasn't there, and Alonso I got in third. Nobody saw Pierre Gasly doing what he did. I think that's what essentially it shows that rain and handling, calling strategy the right way in mixed conditions can make such a difference. Even if your car's not good, you can go and make it up because the rain is more of an equalizer outside of the guy who has a rocket ship and could go and get go for a fast food break, go and take a shit, and still come back, and he could win the race anyways. But what were your thoughts on the Dutch Grand Prix this past weekend?
I mean, yeah, it's another Max Verstappen benefit race, like you say, as always. But for Verstappen, he says that his most stressful win of all the 9 wins that he won, which might be true in the sense of, I guess, the weather and how that behaved. And the weather happened a lot sooner than what people thought it was, which sounds like Florida in a way, with rain just suddenly happening out of nowhere. But this Dutch Grand Prix, of course, I mean, I don't think it was really an issue for Verstappen. Of course, he dropped a little bit to 11th, but it's how it goes when strategy comes into play, especially with the unknowns of racing in the rain and pitting for intermediate tires, and there's all that in factor. But Verstappen, he's able to pull it out as always. So I mean, it's not really a question whether he'd actually win. But I think for Alonso, coming out there and having a good weekend, is definitely a surprise. We haven't seen him on the podium for a bit. Started out the season, grabbing a couple of podiums, but now, this last race here in Zandvoort, finally getting a podium again. So kind of back onto the radar. And then, of course, you talk about Pierre Gasly. I mean, moved from from AlphaTauri, and goes over to Alpine, and really haven't heard from him. So surprising to see him come out and get out on the podium. But I think it's probably benefited from this different strategy in the rain and everything. So yeah, I mean, not really a whole lot to talk about here in this race other than the rain happening. So that did kind of make it interesting. So I guess it's the only time it really gets interesting when Max Verstappen is dominant is if the rain happens and all that stuff. So I mean, after that, Verstappen gets back in control of this race and ends up winning. So yeah, nothing really to talk about other than that. But yeah, once again, Verstappen wins.
Yeah, and we can look at this race. I mean, coming up at the Italian Grand Prix, that could also be an equalizer because of the low downforce setup, and some teams taking chances with their cars relative to what Max is, because he's trying to get the World Championship and the Constructors Championship sewed up. Would be his second legitimate championship if he were to do it. We'll go and preview the Italian Grand Prix in a little bit. Move on to the GSP roundup here for this week, and I'll mention the points when we talk about the Italian Grand Prix. Oh no, actually we're going to talk fantasy football and preseason thoughts or closing thoughts. I'll let you go first, Josh. What are you looking at with the preseason over and leading into the regular season starting more than a week from now? But we're ready to go. Jacksonville is a team on the rise, and a team that a lot of people are looking at in a crowded AFC that could be a dark horse coming into the 2023 season with such a young, talented roster.
And, I think for me personally, now that preseason's over, now can focus in on the regular season. It's been interesting preseason and everything. With the Jags, opening up first pass for Trevor Lawrence, interception, doing that, but then finishing out with some solid drives in the last preseason game against the Dolphins. The Dolphins game is kind of interesting there. I mean, we had some good runs with Tank and Bigsby, of course, and I think that's probably one of the takeaways I have is just seeing what we have behind Travis Etienne there, and then also Calvin Ridley had a good highlight catching one that I think people initially ruled as out of bounds there. So definitely I think it's gonna be interesting with Calvin Ridley coming into this offense. Going to make this team on offense very interesting, and I think if you're a fantasy player, I didn't get Calvin Ridley. I already can't have 3 Jags players, I think, but Travis Etienne, Trevor Lawrence, Calvin Ridley, I think are going to have good seasons. Going to make them not only contenders to win the AFC South, which I think that's definitely a lock right now, but I think also for a deep playoff run. And I expect the Jaguars to make it to the AFC Championship game. That's really, I think, the standard. I'm not going to say Super Bowl yet. We'll see how they do during the regular season, but I definitely expect them to be there, at the end of January, competing for the Lamar Hunt Trophy, going out and seeing if they make it into the Super Bowl. So that's I think that's got to be, as a fan, my expectation there right now, and we'll see how that goes. Defensively, still a bit of a question there. Interior defensive line early on is going to be a little bit banged up. I've already been banged up some during training camp in preseason. Davin Hamilton out for the first 4 games of the season on injured reserve currently for non-football related back injury, which I don't know how that happened, but that's a little bit of a downer there. So that's of course an issue. Got some issues with pass rush. With who they're keeping and everything. I think Josh Allen, Trayvon Walker got to step it up this season and make it interesting. You got Foley Fodakowski, who's been dinged up as well. So defensively, I think if they can produce constantly on the pass rush, definitely help the offense be able to put away games and all that stuff. So looking forward to it and everything. Of course, we got the Colts coming up here. Finally been looking forward to it for many months now, but finally first game of the regular season's on next Sunday. So looking forward to them playing against the Colts, and then of course you got the Chiefs coming up here in week 2. So that's gonna be kind of interesting. It's almost going back to 2017, 2018. The Jags lost late to the Patriots in the AFC Championship game, and then they came out and won in their home opener against the Patriots, and what we thought was going to be their revenge game and preview what was to come. Back then ended up not happening, but with Blake Bortles and everything, and now it's kind of a similar vibe here. The Jags lost to the Chiefs in the playoffs, close loss and everything, and what was a close game, and one that they had a chance to win. And now week 2, they're going to be playing the Chiefs. So if they can come out and beat the Chiefs at home, I think it's going to be a huge statement win for them. Definitely put the entire league on notice on what they're able to do. So definitely looking forward to watching that game and seeing how it all plays out. And speaking of Bortles, saw this tweet that now after being retired from the NFL, now he's bored and trying to build his house, and he's joined the construction crew in building his house in Florida, wherever that is. So kind of interesting. Back in the day, he said if he weren't playing football, he'd be working construction and ripping cigs. So I guess he's living the dream now. It all comes full circle. So kind of interesting how that all plays out. But as far as the actual Jaguars, maybe this time they'll follow through on their expectations after the last time they made the playoffs. So unlike they did last time. So definitely looking forward to it. And of course, fantasy wise, we've already talked about our lineups from our draft a couple weeks ago. So, definitely looking forward to playing again this year and looking to, try to bring home the championship belt or whatever the title is. So, yeah, definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's a championship belt. You get a ring with it as well. So if you're able to win it this year, I'm hoping to actually win it for the first time in, I don't know, I think 9 years, I think is unfortunately. But I hope to get there. For the 49ers, a lot of the preseason was more to do with the two major stories that existed, one with the quarterback battle and one with the ongoing contract situation with the defensive player of the year, Nick Bosa. The Bosa deal has still not happened. They're $4 million apart based on what the Niners are offering relative to what Nick Bosa wants. I think he looks at his career and he looks at some of the injuries he's had and wanting guarantees, looking at his brother as well and his history. He also wants to be the highest paid player, defensive player in the NFL, being in that range with why am I forgetting the LA Rams guy? What the hell is his name? The defensive tackle.
Donald.
Aaron Donald, yeah. Thank you. I mean, there's that, but you also look at the fact that when Nick Bosa is on the field, the 49ers defense is at a different level. When he hasn't been on the field, they have not been as good of a defense, even though they have been high, top defense. They haven't been the best. That is something that with 9 days to go till we get to opening, 9 days till they play against the Pittsburgh Steelers at whatever the fuck they call what used to be Heinz Field. It's something that we have to look at and is concerning. Now, the other piece, I mean, we lost Ray McLeod for a little while, so the punt and kick return situation's kind of, going to be in flux. The kicking situation, there's injuries to both rookie Jake Moody and Zane Gonzalez, the veteran. They had the idea they wanted to trade Zane Gonzalez and get some draft capital, but he got hurt. Moody got hurt. Rumors about trying to get Robbie Gould back, but Gould wants a full season guarantee after all these years of playing, and it would be a short-term rental, if anything. I think the Niners want to see what Moody can do. He has a big leg. They spent their first pick in the draft this past April on him. So that's something that we have to look at. I mean, they were able to kind of keep a lot of the players, some of the key contributors that, didn't leave in free agency, keep guys like T.Y. McGill on the practice squad, somebody who made a lot of big plays late in the year and also in the postseason. The offensive line, you have to look at the right side and how they're going to continue to grow while you have the best offensive lineman in the game in Trent Williams. How many more years can he go being that pillar on the left side? You have Christian McCaffrey. You have an offense that is going to be a dynamic offense as long as Brock Purdy's upright. CMC, Brandon Ayuk, Debo Samuels, if you are some of these other people who say his name, George Kittle, and they had a great chemistry with the Purdy, so I think he could be that dual threat that he was years ago. when he came onto the scene, getting great pass catching numbers while working on and becoming probably the best blocking tight end in the NFL too. The offense is pretty good right now. The defense, we know, has got elite players, the linebackers and stuff with Warner and Greenlaw. You got other players. You got Armstead in the interior, and they also have Javon Hargrave, who they paid a lot of money for from Philadelphia to solidify the inside. They're waiting on Bosa. They've got Cleveland Farrell, who was a former top 5 draft pick for the Raiders. Didn't work out there, but it looks like in this system with the... What the hell is his name? Not Wilkes. It's the defensive coordinator. New defensive coordinator for 49ers. I'm looking at, there you go. It is Steve Wilkes. It is Steve Wilkes. Oh, okay. I thought it was somebody else. Okay, so I was right. Steve Wilkes' system, he's a big secondary guy, which I think is going to be good for the Niners because of the youth they have in the cornerback room. And, there's a lot of changes back there, but Enfinger, elite safety, somebody that is going to keep on getting better. He's that leader on the back end, working with those corners. You have Lenore and you have Mooney Ward back there as well. But the one piece that I have to go and get off my chest is the Trey Lance situation. And I have friends that are 49er fans. I have people that we're in this league with that are 49er fans. In Luke, and he was never a Trey Lance guy. I was. I remember being at the bar with one of my friends who is also in the league, and sitting there on the edge of my seat waiting for who the Niners were going to pick at 3 overall. If they had picked Mac Jones, I was not going to be a 49er fan anymore. If they picked Justin Fields, I was going to be okay with it. And they probably should have picked Justin Fields, honestly. But they picked Trey Lance. And Trey Lance, they were hitching the wagon to him. They were going to have him learn under Jimmy Garoppolo that first year. They literally brought him in the first series of the season. And he ran in for a touchdown. Got hurt, extending the football, hurt his finger and effed him up the whole year. And he had another, lingering injury that took place, but he played. He had 2 starts, 1 bad start and 1 good one. And by the end of 21, they had made the NFC Championship game, or they were in the mix to contend, but they decided after that year that Garoppolo wasn't going to be the guy. They were going to go to Trey. They had given the keys to him to a start and I don't know how many minutes into the first quarter or whatever it was. Kyle Shanahan, in his infinite wisdom, used him like RG3, ran him into the line, and he fractures his leg and ankle, and he's done. And they didn't really use him to the strengths that he had. He wasn't a running quarterback. He could scramble, and he could make plays with his legs, but he wasn't a running quarterback. Yes, his release was slower than it was right here over these last few weeks. He had worked on that. He always worked hard, and he was a team guy. People liked him. He was well liked in the locker room. He wasn't a bad person. If he was a cancer, then I get what's going on. Shanahan and Lynch decided to sign Sam Darnold first day of free agency, and essentially that was the day that they had decided that they were not going to have Trey Lance be a part of the organization anymore. They just hadn't told Trey or a lot of the other people on the roster. They said that there was a battle, but there really wasn't a battle. Trey had a rough preseason opener against the Raiders. Darnold was okay, I guess, but he wasn't spectacular in his performance against the Raiders. And at that one game, along with whatever I probably had decided anyway, they decided that they were going to go on with Sam Darnold. They said that Trey Lance had a chance still, but they played Sam Darnold for 3/4 of the second preseason game, and they put Lance in basically garbage duty. They played better, but in the end, it wasn't enough. And somehow or another, of all the people that they decide to trade, a guy who they spent 3 1s and a 3 for, they trade him to the fucking Dallas Cowboys. I mean, come on. It's bad enough that you royally fuck this guy over. You royally fuck this pickup, and in the world, in the annals of history and drafts, not when you whiff on a draft pick that high on a quarterback, that's usually a franchise killer. The 49ers have somehow or another, with this regime, shielded themselves from that because they got Brock Purdy at 250 whatever. And he was, they were already saying that they were happy with him being the backup guy last year coming out of camp, while they were treating Jimmy Garoppolo like he was a spare part. Once Trey Lance's right leg was fucked, all of a sudden, hey, Jimmy, can you play? And he did. He played all right. He played the best that I think he actually ever played for the 49ers, except for periods of that 19 season when, of course, they went to the Super Bowl. He was a throw away from being the Super Bowl MVP and winning the game. But they really did. They did Trey Lance dirty. It was like organizational negligence in the way that they went about this pick and how they treated him and how they handled it. It was pathetic. In the media and the leaks and all that stuff. Trey Lance was not a bad. Was he the right guy? Is he an elite quarterback? We may never know. But when you spent that many draft picks, and the Miami Dolphins have got 4 starters off of that deal, because they traded all those damn draft picks. The Philadelphia Eagles have benefited from that trade. And then also, I'm trying to remember, there's one other team. Oh, yeah, the Cowgirls. They got Micah Parsons. So they've literally helped 3 franchises set themselves up with elite players. They then quit on their number 3 draft pick and never truly, honestly give him a chance. They're hitching their wagon to a guy who was Mr. Irrelevant, who had a good half a season. Kind of, it has vibes of what Jimmy did for 5 games in 2017 when they were 0-11 and were going to get the number 1 draft pick. He wins 5 games in a row to end the season, and they break him off the big contract. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the 49ers have been, they were a laughing stock of a franchise for the better part of this century. They had the period for 3 or 4 years with Harbaugh. Then they fucked him over. Then the Shanahan-Lynch regime came in. They've had ups and downs, a lot of injuries to key players, and Trey Lance was was one of them. But to me, it's coaching and organizational negligence. If Kyle Shanahan is supposed to be a quarterback guru and a guy who can develop players, then you shouldn't have to have people who are just robots playing your system. You should be able to take an athlete, somebody who has a good arm but needs refinement, and work on those tools, but also look at what skill set he has and build a system around him. Not say, no, you have to do everything that I say, period. A good coach is able to make their system work for whoever they have. Kyle Shanahan has proven over, I don't know how many places he's been, that if he's not able to implement his system the way he wants to and have the kind of players that fit that, he'll end up quitting or it'll end up not working. He had Jimmy Garoppolo for all these years. The guy, when he was upright, more or less was pretty solid, but he couldn't stay upright. And Trey, 4 fucking starts or whatever in his career for a number 3 overall draft pick, and they dump him for a 4th to the Cowgirls. And then they're taking Sam Darnold as their backup, who's also been a bum and who's been a bust, failed with the Jets, and they'll say, well, that was Adam Gase. That's completely honest. You can say that has relevancy. We went to Carolina and he was mediocre. But he's like, oh, he can make the throws and he can make the reads and all this. Look, here's the reality. If Brock Purdy gets hurt, the 49ers are fucked. It's basically what this has been ever since they've came in. Kyle Shanahan thought that he would take Brian Hoyer and be a starter, and they were 0-10. They had to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, and they somehow or another were able to. Garoppolo had 2 season-ending injuries in 3 years. The 1 year he didn't, or 1 year he doesn't, they go to the Super Bowl and should have won. They use all that capital for Trey Lance. He gets hurt basically in the first game he plays and dealt with those injuries the whole time. He doesn't utilize Trey Lance the way he needs to and build him up. They don't really prepare him, put him in the fire, give him a start and change. He gets hurt for the year. It's over. And that's basically when it ended. Brock Purdy comes out of nowhere and becomes the wonderkind. He becomes the second coming of freaking Doug Flutie. But what the hell are we doing? I mean, it makes no sense to me. They could have stayed at 12 or whatever. They could have moved up a couple spots and got Justin Fields. They could have stayed at 12 and done Mac Jones, and I wouldn't have to deal with this right now. They could have done any number of things outside of drafting Trey Lance. I mean, Zach Wilson now is sitting behind Aaron, likely for the next 2 years. You are the only quarterback out of that class that theoretically has functionality is Josh's guy. But then he was basically the second coming of Peyton or the can't miss guy like Peyton or Andrew Luck. So Jacksonville had that in their pocket, even with Urban Meyer being Urban Meyer, and having Balky there as well. It's a joke. And the Niners spent the whole summer and this whole offseason being in the media with how they've handled this situation. And it's been an absolute clusterfuck. And to me, I am curious, and I really want to see what this team is like in week one, what kind of energy they have going to Pittsburgh, and how they respond. Because Kyle Shanahan, the way he's handled this and the way he's talked in the media, does not make me feel very confident about what the Niners can do this season. A lot of people are saying that they are a Super Bowl contender. I agree. But you need to have the team behind you to do that. You need to have 53 players or however many behind you that are going to all come together as one to carry that mission out. And the way Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch did this, I don't believe that's the case. And if you waste this opportunity, you have a 3-year window now with Brock Purdy. If he ends up being that guy, we don't know. I like Brock Purdy. I have no problem with Brock Purdy. It's not about him. But if it flames out with him, they're fucked. It's a complete disaster. You can't draft who the hell are they going to draft? They can't draft Caleb Williams because the Arizona Cardinals are tanking for him. You know, who the hell are you going to get? I don't like it. I can't imagine what Trey Lance felt. I feel bad for him. I mean, man, he's made a lot of money anyways. He gets to sit on the bench in Dallas. Jerry Jones gets to go and stick one to the 49ers. But it's just bad, and I don't like it. And I don't think Kyle Shanahan should be very proud of how he handled this situation. It gives me a lot of vibes to how he handled RG3 and basically ended his career. Not because I like RG3 as a person, but he was a dynamic player and basically let him get destroyed. And within the span of 1 year, he went from being a cover athlete on video games and the rookie of the year to being done. That's why Kirk Cousins became a thing. All right. I'm done with that. I don't want to talk about Kyle Shanahan, at least for a little while, because he's really douchey, and the way he handled that whole situation pisses me off. Indy next. Getting to round up Indy next. Christian Rasmussen comes in to this weekend's race at Portland with a 50-point lead over Hunter McElroy, or McElroy, however I pronounce it. I change it every time I say it. Jacob Abel, third in points. Nolan Siegel and Louis Foster rounding out the top five. The results at Firestone Out Front Showdown. Rasmussen won, led 70 of the race's 75 laps. McElroy led the other 5. Louis Foster finished in between there in second. Jacob Abel, Danielle Frost rounded out the top 5. Matthew Brabham was 7th. Ernie Francis Jr. 8th. Jamie Chadwick ended up finishing 12th. So we'll see what happens. There are 2 races to go in the Indy next season. Rasmussen on the cusp of a championship, but I'm not sure what his prospects are for 2024 in an Indy car. I don't think the options are there as of now, unless he brings a little more budget to the table. At VIR, Virginia International Raceway, Michelin GT Challenge, the Corvette Racing duo Jordan Taylor, Antonio Garcia get the victory over Ben Barnicoat and Jack Hawksworth in the Vassar Sullivan Lexus. Madison Snow and Brian Sellers win GTD and finish third overall in their Paul Miller Racing BMW. Another BMW, the Turner Motorsport car, Robbie Foley and Patrick Gallagher finish second in class, fourth overall. Philip Ellis, Russell Ward, and Windward Racing Mercedes, third in class and fifth overall. The third place finisher in GT Pro was Klaus Bachler and Patrick Pile in the Pfaff Motorsports Porsche, finished 12th overall. And so that's, Jordan Taylor. The fastest lap was actually run by Barnicoat over Jordan Taylor. Then it was Robbie Follier run the fastest lap in GTD over Madison Snow, and Frederick Schandorf running the McLaren. The points, now we're running. They're going to be racing at Indianapolis in a couple of weeks' time, first time in a few years with that. So the point standings for the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship in the GTP category, the number 10, Wayne Taylor Andretti Acura leads by 14 points over Alexander Sims Pippo Durrani in the Whelen Cadillac. Nick Yellowly and Connor D. Filippi third. Jaminet and Tandy in the Penske Porsche fourth, and Tom Blomqvist and Colin Braun fifth for Meyer Shank Racing. In LMP2, Ben Keating and Paul-Loup Chatin lead by 45 points over Stephen Thomas and Mikkel Jensen. Ben Hanley and George Kurtz in the CrowdStrike car third. Gar Robinson leads in LMP3, trying to get another championship before they move to LMP2. In GTD Pro, Hawksworth Barnicoat lead the points over Garcia and Taylor. Oh, they didn't even put that. That's great. And Jules Gounon and Daniel Juncadella are in a close battle with Patrick Peely and Klaus Bachler. And then in GTD, Sellers and Snow add to their points lead over Roman DeAngelis, Marco Sorensen in the Harder Racing Aston, and Schandorf and Brendan Uribe in the McLaren Inception car, Frankie Montecalvo, Aaron Tielitz in the Vassar Sullivan Lexus, and the Mercedes of Mike Skeen and Mikhail Renier. Formula 3 comes back this weekend, and because of qualifying things that went on in qualifying, Gabriel Bortoleto becomes the champion. He was going to win the championship anyway. It's the final 3 races, the final round of their season. So Gabriel Bortoleto is the champion this year. It's, though, a very close race after that from 2nd through 6th, only separated by 12 points. So Paul Aaron, Pepe Marti, Zach O'Sullivan, Franco Colapinto, and Daniel Boganovic are all in a position, and that's, key positions and points to go and possibly get the super license points to move up and even get possibilities of getting a Formula One testing deal, FP1 session. So something to watch there. In Formula 2, standings going into this weekend, coming off of Budapest, or what is it? Where are we at? Why am I saying that? Or not Budapest. Going through Zandvoort, Clement Novalak won the feature race, which is he only had 2 points the whole year, and that was at the first sprint race that was at Baku, and then now he wins. so it doesn't affect anything in the points. Both Pocher and Vesti didn't score. Top 4 guys didn't even score points over the entire weekend. Second place was Zane Maloney, moves him up to 9th. Third was Jack Crawford, moves him up to a tie for 11th with Kushmini. So we'll see what happens. Right now, the 2 rounds, 4 total races, but 2 rounds to go, Monza, and then a long break before they race at Abu Dhabi for their season finale. MotoGP coming back this weekend at Barcelona. 62-point lead for Pecco Bagnaia, trying to win his 2nd consecutive championship for Ducati. Jorge Marti in 2nd. Marco Bezzecchi announcing that he'll stay with the VR46 team. Is right now in 3rd. Brad Binder, Johan Zarco, who announced he's going to be running for LCR next year, in Honda in 5th. Luca Marini 6th, and Ali Espargaro 7th. In Moto 2, the Moto 2 championship, just out of the, I'm trying to go here. This website is god awful. I'm trying to get the information, but it's hard to access it because this is ridiculous. I don't care. I know that I'll see what happens in next week for Moto 2. I know that the Americans, in terms, they struggled, so they have issues with the injuries and all that. So there's things they have to bring up with that, and then trying to find results, standings. So it doesn't bring. Okay, there you go. And then Moto 2 championship. Yeah, that's what I needed, but I'm not going to bother. The Big Go U.S. Nationals this weekend, they've already had qualifying earlier this evening. But, you got guys out there. You want to win this race, guys and girls, trying to go and win the Big Go. It means so much, kind of like the 500, Daytona 500, Indianapolis 500, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, you got event info. They don't list the number of cars. I mean, you have Factory X, whatever the hell. Yeah, so that's a bunch of, so a Dodge, 2 Camaros, and a Ford Mustang. Greg Stanfield and Alan Johnson bringing it back old school. Hemi Challenge, a bunch of the old Plymouths and Dodges, so that's a cool category. Terry Earwood, that's a name from the past. Factory Stock Showdown, you have Aaron Stanfield, of course, who's running in Pro Stock. Mark Powick, the former Pro Stock racer for many years, going through there. Looking at some of these other people, don't really know who any of those people are, so that's fine. And go through that, move through all of that. In Top Alcohol Dragster, you have a nice field there, but you also have number 314. His name is Anthony Wayne Stewart, driving his Mobil 1 Dragster, and he wants to win the Big Go here this weekend, but he has to race against a very tough field, the likes of teammates and Jasmine Salinas and other ladies, Jackie Frick, Julie Nadas, Madison Payne. I mean, I think there's a lot of ladies in this category, so you got to give credit to them, how good they're racing too. You have Mike Coughlin, who's one of Stewart's teammates as well. It's a tough field, trying to go and make the show, going and actually giving yourself a chance to win this race. Pro Mod, you have, I'm trying to see, Ricky Smith's in a Mustang, so that's cool. That's rare. Other than that, there's 3 Fords, but a bunch of Chevys. And Pro Stock Motorcycle, you know, they're trying to lock in for the playoffs. They haven't been around in a month. But we're just focusing on Gage Herrera. Can he go and win at Indianapolis to add on to what has been a dominant rookie season for him? Or can one of these veteran guys like Matt Smith or Steve Johnson, A. Krawick, or Hector Rana come around and get the victory? Pro Stock Car, we know, has been a lot about Dallas Glenn this year, but Enders has won a bunch of times. Greg Anderson's won there a bunch of times. And you have young guns like Stanfield and Coughlin that want to get that first Wally there, amongst others. And then Funny Car, Caps finally got over the hump and got the win at Indianapolis, running a Don Perdome Hot Wheels throwback. And then you got John Force, the Ageless Wonder, Robert Height up there, Cruz Pentragon, Tim Wilkerson, J.R. Todd, etc., etc. And Top Fuel Dragster, Steve Torrance, who's number 1 right now. Bob Tasco's number 1 in Funny Car. You have Antron Brown's won multiple Indianapolis races. Austin Prock trying to get that first win at Indy. You look at Tony Schumacher, who's won more races at Indianapolis than anybody. And got some other guys. Langdon, who's won this race. Doug Coletta, I think it would be his 50th win if he were to get the win this weekend. We'll see what happens with that. Formula One, the Italian Grand Prix, the practice results saw Fish Lips not fit. Yeah, he was the leader in practice 1 by 46 thousandths of a second over Carlos Sainz, the driver from Ferrari. Checo Perez 3rd, Charles Leclerc 4th, George Russell 5th. Alonso, Norris, Hamilton, Tsunoda, Albon rounds out the top 10. Logan Sargent was 12th. Liam Lawson 13th. In practice 2, Sainz over his former teammate Norris. Perez crashed in practice 2, but was 3rd. With his fastest lap, Piastri 4th. Fish Lips, Leclerc, Albon, Alonso, Russell, and Nico Hulkenberg. Logan Sargent 16th, and 17th was Lewis Hamilton. Liam Lawson 18th. And then there were problems for Lance Stroll, who had given up his car for practice 1 to the defending Formula 2 champion Felipe Drogovic. Let's go and look at the picks here. You had first pick last week for the Dutch Grand Prix, so I'll put Italian Grand Prix. Phil Fish Lips to win. And then second place, I'm going to go and put I'm going to put Carlos Sainz. Why not? I think Ferrari actually goes out there and Sainz keeps it going through the whole weekend. Second and in third will be Oscar Piastri. What do you think, Josh? Who do you look at outside of Fish Lips to get on the podium?
I'm actually going to go against the grain here, and I'm going to say that Max Verstappen actually doesn't win this weekend.
Ah,
And the reason why I say that is not because I just don't want him to win, but I mean, remember 2020, something happened to Lewis Hamilton during the race, and then um, Pierre Gasly ended up winning that one. And then 21 probably was going to be either Max or Lewis Hamilton. There, they took themselves out, and ended up being that Ricardo got his only win for McLaren. So I think this race seems like things can happen. You talked about it earlier that Monza is kind of an equalizer race. So that's kind of my thinking there. And I think the win streak for Verstappen kind of comes to an end here, but not because it just doesn't have the pace, but I think just some kind of bad luck will happen. So I'm actually gonna go Sergio Perez winning this race. And then I'll say Leclerc second here, leading the charge for Ferrari, and then I'll say Verstappen in third place. So as kind of a hedge. So yeah, that's kind of what I think there. I mean, yeah, it's way different than what we've been saying the last couple weeks, and who knows, maybe I will probably be wrong, but it's just kind of how I'm thinking here, kind of going for the chaos aspect here, especially last couple of years at Monza.
Yeah, it's valid. Definitely, Monza's one that can be a wild card because of the aero, because of the flat out aspects, other things that come into play. I mean, the history there with in '88, for example, and Enzo Ferrari passes away a few weeks before, and McLaren was on the way to winning every single race that year, and Jean-Louis Schlesser gets in the way of Ayrton Senna, who was having issues and trying to save fuel because Prost pushed him so hard, ended up falling out of the race. Pushed him so hard he needed to save fuel to make it, and then crashed out of the deal, and Ferrari ends up winning the Italian Grand Prix. So weird stuff happens at Monza, so why not? Portland, we have one practice so far at Portland this weekend. I mean, they'll have another practice on Saturday and then qualifying. So far, I mean, I mentioned the practice, or I think I mentioned the practice results from earlier today. Christian Lundgaard led over Kirkwood and Palou. Pato Award fourth. Felix Rosenquist was fifth. Malukas, Grosjean, VK, Rossi, Newgarden in the top 10. Some of the other guys you'd look at, I mean, Ericsson 12th, McLaughlin 16th, Power 17th, Scott Dixon 19th, and Colton Herta's 20th. So, I mean, for me, for the sake of interest and wanting it to keep going, I'm going to pick Scott Dixon to win. He's gotten into a first lap incident at Portland and won. He's done it all, so why not? Why don't he go and win another one? While Tom Blomqvist hasn't had any pace so far, I figure he'll figure it out. I think he has the ability to make improvements through the weekend. And I look at him as my wild card choice, largely because I can't stomach picking Devlin DeFrancesco as my wild card in general. I just can't, and I won't. So those are my picks for Portland. Or you know what? You should have went first. My fault.
That's fine. Because I mean, I just went
You're
Well,
mute.
no, I mean, I went just now on the last one on the F1, so it's your, yeah, but it's fine. No, I mean, for me, the pick for this weekend, I mean, yeah, I'm just gonna say that Alex Palou wins and puts this whole championship to bed, and everything, and shuts the door on his teammate. Goes out there and proves. And I'm picking him, and also, it's kind of a projection. Also, want to see him try to just close it out and everything, kind of this chapter of his career and everything, and move on to probably stay with Chip Ganassi, but just move on from all the drama with McLaren and all that stuff, and then prove he can close the deal when he's under pressure and everything. So pick him there. But for my pick, wild card wise, I'll go with Rinus VK here. He had a decent time, 8th place on the charts in practice one. Let's kind of want to see how he does. He's had a really bad struggle this year. Hasn't really had the greatest season. So, let's see, if he can take his car and, finish maybe top 10 this weekend in Portland. So, we'll see what happens. Kind of maybe going out there a little bit, but, I'm comfortable being able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, Rinus VK, we know the kind of talent and ability he has, but, I think he's been held back by the Ed Carpenter racing team and the issues that they've had in recent times, for sure. We'll start with the Xfinity series here. One of their shorter races of the season. The Sport Clips Help a Hero 200, under 47 laps, 39 cars. One will miss the race. Let's see here. Trying to look through some. We got Weatherman in the 4, with Smithley in the 6. Stephen Parsons driving for SS Greenlight along with Chad Fincham. Justin Haley in the 10. Kyle Larson driving the Hendrick 17. Trevor Bayne back in the 19 for Gibbs. Corey Heim in the 24 for Sam Hunt. Trying to see some others. Ryan, Sage Karam in the 44 this weekend. Rajah Caruth in the 45. Matt Mills driving for Emerling Gase. Timmy Hill in the MBM Carl Long 66. Ross Chastain driving for DGM in the 91 car. So I'll what is it? What did I say there? So I was supposed to go last there, but I went first. But whatever, I'll go and do it the orders this way. I'm gonna end up going. I'm gonna go with Sheldon Creed as my pick to win, because at some point he has to win a freaking race. I mean, it's insane for the kind of talent he is. And his ability to drive on like slick and rough surfaces, he's really, really good at that. So I mean, and he really should have won this race last year. Wild card for me, I'll go with Corey Heim. The Sam Hunt team has had solid results throughout the year. So Corey Heim getting Xfinity Series opportunities is a good deal for him. So I'll go with Creed to win. Heim wild card. What say you, Josh?
I'm gonna go with Kyle Larson Interestingly enough, he is going against the car that won Kyle Busch driving this weekend in the LA Golf number 10, but Kyle Larson in the number 17. So, HendrickCars.com Chevy. So, I think it's going to be a very Kyle and Kyle show this weekend at Darlington Raceway. Actually, kind of cup heavy because Denny Hamlin's in the 19 and the Sport Clips car, Toyota. So, yeah, very cup heavy actually this weekend. Lots of cup guys, and you got Chastain, but I think Kyle Larson is going to be the best and be the winner here. Sweep the weekend here at Darlington. Well, not sweep the weekend, but sweep the Xfinity schedule of races at Darlington since he won in the spring. Dramatic finish there with John Hunter Nemechek there at the end, so I'll go with him. And then, as my wild card, can you remind me what the rule is again for the Xfinity Series? Is it top 15? For Xfinity Series that we're going with, or is it lower than that?
I mean, it's all the people that have run the full season right now, so that's 20. I'm putting in the likes of Kyle Sieg, Brennan Poole, whatever, so the 25, Blaine Perkins, 26. So I consider